No one untouched in this country by the effects of this massacre. We all know people, brothers and sisters, men and women, sons and daughters who've been affected by this. And we're so worried for the elderly, for the disabled, for the young people, for the babies that are now in Hamas captivity in Gaza. What an unbelievable circumstance. So yes, we have to show these images. We must be strong in telling the world. And one of the things that we try to do is leverage that reach, all these people around the world, so that they will share those images and reach out to networks, to friends and relatives and neighbors and networks, so that they can understand what is happening here and speak up against it.
And Mr. Dixon, on the flip side, lots of misinformation and disinformation from the other side of this war. Still, we're seeing many pro-Hamas protests on the ground and pro-Hamas content online. For our viewers watching us, how can this arena be fought? What should they be doing? What are you doing?
Absolutely, and unfortunately justifications as well. How appalling that after such a massacre you could see justifications, but that's what we've seen online and on the streets. We set up a situation room immediately. It can be found at standwithus.com/situation room, where we're housing all the fact sheets that we have. We're giving signs for people to take to rallies, credible information that they can share so that they can get the word out in a factual way. And we must all be active in this. When you see disinformation, call it out. If you see anti-Semitic or violent posts against Jews, report them to the social media networks and share the content that you need to share in order to get this message across. This must not stand. And in the days that wane, and this will probably be a long campaign, we will see this constant drip of misinformation and attack towards Israel. We must constantly remind people why this has happened. This was not a war that Israel launched. This was a war launched on Israel. It is a war of survival, and Israel must win.
And you know, Mr. Dixon, earlier in the broadcast we spoke to an expert on resilience, and she was talking about how to not try and avoid feeling what we're feeling or distract ourselves with something else, but to utilize those terrible emotions we're all sharing into action. And this perhaps is an action that can be pursued to be proactive about the rage, the anger, the pain that many of our viewers must be feeling.
It's right to have rage, it's right to have anger, but we can channel it and we can make our voices heard, and that's how we'll get through this. I wrote a book called Resilience, Israeli Resilience, and we have always risen above, and we haven't just survived, we thrived, and we will continue to do so today. We will prevail.
And on that note, Michael Dixon, Executive Director of Stand With Us Israel, thank you very much for your what you're doing.
We're actually still moving through the community. It's starting to exit now, but I want to show you just some of the destruction to these houses as well, because as I showed you all of the destruction that these terrorists committed on foot as they bombarded and massacred this community. There were also air raids and rockets happening overhead, completely taking out buildings like this one. So it was really a mixture of everything happening on the ground and in the sky as well, completely devastating this community. Truly horrific images that we're seeing. Now, as we're leaving the community, you can see all of these soldiers here. As I said, so many of them called from their homes, jumping into action at a moment's notice. Many of these reservists leaving all of their families behind to be here to protect Israel's southern border, less than a quarter of a mile away. We continue to hear loud artillery and shelling in the distance at the Gaza border as we're walking out. So really, all of these soldiers are doing their best to protect us, the journalists who are also out here, because they want us to see exactly what's happening and what they've been witnessing with their own eyes for these past 3 days. Many of them coming here Saturday night, and they knew that no other soldiers had been here yet, and so they kind of knew an idea of what was happening, but no one could expect that it would be like this. The horrors that I'm hearing from these soldiers, as I mentioned earlier, about 40 babies at least were taken out on gurneys. Still, right now, they're going house to house, still evacuating dead bodies, killed
Nicole,
Israeli citizens who were killed
I have to cut in. It's such a shocking, jarring statement there. And just for our viewers, we're in a new hour here on the broadcast who very likely weren't with us last hour to understand that you've come in there to find this small community littered with the dead and slaughtered bodies of Israeli civilians primarily, and you're saying 40 babies, dead babies.
That is what one of the commanders told me. And you continue to see just cribs overturned, strollers left behind, all of these doors wide open. He said, we don't know the exact number of casualties because they're still collecting dead bodies, still going door to door because the active fighting here just stopped. He said it came in waves almost. Every 20 minutes they thought maybe, okay, I think we finally cleared all the terrorists, and then 30 minutes later another cell would emerge. So it was ongoing, and even when they thought that it had finally ended, more terrorists popped out of nowhere, and that continues to be the scene now. It is under control now, and that's why we are allowed to come through the area. However, throughout southern Israel right now, there are still actively searching for terrorists in some of these fields behind me. I mean, you could see still just artillery completely destroying some of these sidewalks in this community, and this is just minor compared to everything that's happening inside these homes. Everything that these soldiers themselves are saying, they say it is unlike anything they've ever seen in their entire lives before. The number of bodies, the number of casualties, the number of their family members, their friends who all live in these communities, it's truly horrific images that they've seen firsthand. And as you can see, still, you can hear those explosions overhead, still active, ongoing fighting over, as we're so close to the Gaza border right now, David. David, it's hard to even explain exactly just the mass casualties that happened right here. In fact, the Israeli military says they still don't have a clear number, but I'm talking to some of the soldiers, and they say what they've witnessed as they've been walking through these different houses, these different communities, babies, their heads cut off. That's what they said. Gunned down, families completely gunned down in their beds. You can see some of these soldiers right now comforting each other. Many of them reserves who jumped into action, leaving their own families behind as well, not knowing the sheer horror that they were about to come to. They say they've never experienced anything like this. This is nothing that anyone could have even imagined when you're walking through here. Baby cribs thrown to the side. Doors thrown wide open. Still some Israeli bodies still here because the fighting in this community just ended just recently. So many of these troops are still going house to house, door to door. It's taken them sometimes 30 minutes, 40 minutes, because many of these houses are also still have grenades in them, booby traps. In fact, as we're trying to get closer to some of these scenes, we're being told, no, get back from some of these Israeli military because there are still grenades in the area. I want us to keep walking through, continue to kind of see the destruction that's happening on the ground here. Even something as simple as a soccer net just left to the side here as people were with their families playing. I see in the distance more bodies being covered, all the while as they're covering these Israeli bodies, trying to evacuate everyone else from the territory, taking all of the casualties out of here. It's also littered with the bodies of terrorists. So we're hearing from one of the lead commanders here. It was anywhere from maybe 70 armed terrorists who made their way here from the Gaza border fence, which is less than a quarter of a mile away. And as I said, the atrocities that they committed, violence with guns, with grenades, with knives, targeting these innocent civilians inside their homes. So for the soldiers here, it's a very, very difficult scene for them as well. As I said, leaving their families behind, but they say they will continue to be here, continue to kill every terrorist who is in the area. You can hear we're very, very close to the Gaza Strip, so we continue to hear artillery firing overhead as well. Even as we were giving this tour, we were told to get on the ground and take cover because you're so close to the Strip right now, you don't even get the red alert. You actually hear the boom before you're even told to get to the ground. So this is the reality, and this is what all of these soldiers, you can see, none of them expecting this, but all of them being here, ready for the fight nonetheless, and proud to fight for their country is what I'm hearing as well. And so that's why they want to show the press, they want to show these very, very difficult images, David, but they want everyone out here because they want to see and show exactly what is happening here on the ground.
At DriveTime.com, we've been hard at work. And we finally did it.
Did you make it so I can finally see my real payments and shop at thousands of cars with no hit to my credit?
Wait, yes! You can go to DriveTime.com and get approved
with no credit hit. Shop for cars and customize your own payments with no credit hit.
Look, there's a slidey thingy. I'm changing my own payments. I feel strong!
Shop for cars with no credit hit.
Grandma, they did it! DriveTime finally did it!
Shop for cars online with no credit hit at DriveTime.com.
For the first time, they're letting us into one of these communities. Right now, we are in Kibbutz Kfar Aza, the site of one of these massacres. Right now, you're looking behind me just how close we are to the Gaza Strip. These plumes of smoke behind us here, less than a quarter of a mile away. This is a very, very active scene right now. And we are going through the community. I can't even describe the images that we've seen. I think it's better for you just to see them for yourself. Community cars, all right here, completely devastated. This is some of the destruction we've seen. They don't even have the exact number of how many people were killed as we were walking through here. They're still escorting bodies of Israeli citizens who live in this community, still transporting their bodies out of here. They say anywhere from upwards of 70 armed terrorists infiltrated this community. Some of the bodies still lining the area. Graphic images. But this is the reality of exactly who was able to infiltrate here. Now, this isn't a war scene. That's what one of the commanders said. This isn't a battleground. This was not soldiers fighting against other soldiers. These were terrorists infiltrating families, babies, grandmothers, all of them here in their homes. You can see how active of a scene this is right now as these soldiers continue to patrol the area for us, because
Nicole, we're seeing that they're getting into firing position. Sorry to cut in here. We see soldiers dropping to the ground in firing position behind you. There's still active threats in the area?
There are still active threats in the area, David. In fact, as we were coming here, we continue to hear active gunfire, and they're urging us to listen to every word that they say, because this is very, very much an active scene. While they hope that there are no terrorists in the community, but they say that's even a possibility right now, because it's so difficult to comb through these areas. But you can see this massacre. That's really the only way you can describe the smell. It smells of death here. Now, there are so many different other journalists here, and the commanders want to show exactly what's happening. So even though it is a dangerous situation, they want to get these images out so that they can show that this wasn't a battleground. This was a massacre, as plainly as you can put it, David. And we continue to see more and more images as we continue to just walk through this community that was absolutely devastated.
And Nicola, we can see clearly you're embedded there with some of these frontline troops, a good company of them perhaps. Now, is that the defining, surrounding feature finally in this area? There are many, many IDF troops. Clearly, the Army has arrived in all these areas now.
Yes, the Army has arrived in all of these areas, but it's because they're still protecting many of these areas. As I said, there are still terrorists who are in the area. They're still actively patrolling. We've even seen some of the vehicles that these terrorists have used to infiltrate this area. They say don't get near the vehicles because it could still be booby-trapped. It could still explode. So while we're taking these images, we still have to stay away. And so it really is a very graphic scene where we're surrounded by death here. And so all of these soldiers are doing their best to protect us because, as I said, they want to show exactly what's happening here, David.
Where there is a smell of gunpowder, we've seen explosions and we've heard the tack-tack of the gunfire. There seems to be a clash between 4 or 5 infiltrators that have managed to pass the border. The border is very unequal here. You have a wall at certain places, but you also have a fence at other places, which could be also a possibility that they managed to go between the crowd cracks and infiltrate. Now, we were just there this morning, nearby the village, the Bedouin village of Arab El Aramche. That's where the infiltration took place, and we saw that the border was very uneven. Now you can see there are police forces, reserve forces, border police forces that are here. They've set up a roadblock in order to prevent from drivers to go onto the along the northern border road, and the residents of all the communities, not only the adjacent communities alongside the border, but also the communities that are further in the rear, are instructed to be in their shelters and to turn the key and to not go out in the street. This is right now the situation. We're hearing a helicopter hovering in the air, trying probably to see if there are further infiltration. Now the gunfire, the sound of gunfire has stopped at this moment, but you see more troops, reserve soldiers coming in and probably buffering the area. There's going to be a lot of searches in the area, probably to check that the incident is over. Right now, we don't even know if it's really over, but we don't hear gunfire. The only thing that we hear is the roaring of the helicopter. We're going to try, and Dean Barenboim is going to show you there are police soldiers from special units probably that are aiming in the direction of the border. You can see probably the three police officers that are there, and further inside is the road that leads to the northern border that we've been taking the whole morning in order to find locations. Now, the problem is in this area this morning there was a demonstration by Palestinian refugees from the En El Khilwe refugee camp nearby the city of Tyre in southern Lebanon, which is about 10 kilometers from where we are by bird-eye view. And it is possible, but that's only an assumption, that there could be Palestinian militants that were trying to infiltrate. You see more forces now suddenly coming out in the open, something that we haven't seen for the past day and a half since we've been touring the northern border. And suddenly they all spring up as soon as there is an infiltration. Now, we heard earlier that there were many soldiers hidden in the maquis, in the scrubland, in order to set ambushes to potential infiltrators. And this is maybe one of those scenarios that now the army is acting upon in order to intercept these infiltrators. Benita?
Pierre, give us an understanding, a sense of the terrain there at the moment. It's very different from a security fence like we see down south. Here we can see the scene behind you. It would seem very difficult for terrorists to try and get across into Israel. Give us an idea of what that would look like, and therefore what a search right now would look like by the IDF.
The terrain is indeed very difficult. There's a lot of scrub land, and it's very, very dense. You have also cliffs, but you have also path roads, goat paths that are leading to the area. And the problem is that the border fence is very uneven. You have a new set of wall construction that is still under construction, but I've seen cracks on that wall because the wall is still not completed in this area. And also, you have at certain areas only an electrical fence, which allows, once you touch the fence, to alert the IDF that there is an attempt to infiltrate Israeli territory. So it's very possible that they used that terrain in order to be able to enter Israeli territory. We don't know yet. There's going to be probably an inquiry. You see more gathering of police forces here because we're inside Israeli territory. So police forces are also very much involved. And the clash is probably between the two settlements of Adamit and Arab El Aramshe. Earlier, we were in Arab El Aramshe. It's a Bedouin village which is half in Lebanon and half in Israel. And it is possible, we don't know, that the infiltration is stemming from Palestinian militants and used by Hezbollah. I don't know. We don't know yet. But there is indeed a sense that Hezbollah, the Iranian-backed militia, is testing the waters more and more since yesterday. Benita?
And Pierre, just give us a quick understanding of what this looks like right now for communities in the region, briefly, please.
The residents of the adjacent communities on the border, such as Adamit and Arab El Aramshe, where the infiltration took place, it seems, these residents have been urged, recommended to evacuate their villages. Yet, not everybody has left. Now, the new instruction, because of that particular event, is for all the residents, not just of the adjacent villages on the border, but also in the villages and towns further in the rear, such as Shlomi, which is just a few minutes away from here, to stay in their shelter, and wait for further instruction.
Israel is at war, a war against the vicious terror organization Hamas, following the brutal slaughter of civilians, amongst them children, women, and teenagers dancing in an holiday party in the field. They gunshot the children at the party with automatic weapon in an evil not created by the devil. We will regain control and bring back security and stability. We will defeat terror because there is no other choice. As many Israeli and other of different nationalities are held hostage, we are committed to bring them back in the spirit of mutual responsibility.
Did you know there's a way to cut your dishwashing time by 50%? Try Dawn Power Wash Dish Spray. It removes 99% of grease and grime in half the time. Dawn Power Wash has 3 cleaning boosters not found in traditional dish soaps that remove food and grease 5 times faster. And because it cleans so well, you can replace multiple cleaning products for counters, stoves, and even laundry stains. Try Dawn Power Wash Dish Spray. Brand power helping you buy better.
Whether it's a last-second bake sale, Taco Tuesday, or a meal for your future in-laws, it's gonna be great. With McCormick by your side for over 130 years, it's gonna be great.
So many kidnapped, dragged back into the clutches of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, from the elderly to toddlers, so many in between. Men, women, did not matter. And now we're fortunate to be joined by Adva Hadar. She's the granddaughter of Yafa Hadar, who was kidnapped by Hamas and was highly filmed throughout that process here. If you see, many of the images have emerged. Look, thank you for being with us. I want to start, of course, thank you for having the strength and the fortitude to appear on our show right now. Nothing easy about that, but it is so important. I want to tell you, there's people looking in from around the world who deeply care about us, who want to know what's happening, want to understand more. So thank you for being with us. Look,
thank you for listening.
Your elderly grandmother, I mean, as I mentioned, she was widely filmed, as she was taken in. First, just tell us, what do we know? What do you know about what happened?
My grandmother lives in Kibbutz Nir Oz, which is near the border with Gaza. She's 85 years old and she lives by herself. We lost contact with her around 9 a.m. when she wrote us that there's terrorists in the kibbutz, that they are shooting and shouting. Oh my God, there's pictures.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Take your time, of course.
I'm sorry.
No,
They are
please.
shooting and shouting, and then we lost contact. We couldn't reach her anymore. Everyone's out from where they were hiding. My aunt asked them to get into her house, and they found the house completely broken. The terrorists that got there left nothing, and she wasn't there. There was such a chaos. No one knew where is she and what happened. And we heard that there's videos, so we started to look at them, and then we found her video of dead people from Gaza. The terrorists uploaded of her getting kidnapped and brought into Gaza. You can hear them in the background clapping their hands, celebrating like it's some kind of a trophy.
Look, I thought
It's not an
we're showing
85
that
years
we're showing that on the
woman.
screen right now, and I know this is horrifying and painful to see. We're
I
showing.
can't hear you. I'm sorry. Just a minute. I don't
No
know
problem.
why I
I'm
can't
just-
hear you.
Our viewers, again, we're seeing
You
that
hear me?
video here. Yes, I hear you, Adva. I don't know if you can
Okay.
hear us. We were just
Now I
showing
hear you.
that video of her in that cart that looks like it was something stolen from the kibbutz. Straightforward, may have been her own little vehicle for getting around the kibbutz that they drove back to Gaza, taking her in there. Yes, I know this is gut wrenching and painful. And again, thank you for being with us on this. I believe it's critically important for our viewers around the world to see this, to take it in, to understand what happened here. So, thank you for being strong. This is obviously crushing to see this right now, but we see your grandmother at least appearing to be in okay shape, in this cart. I mean, this is an upside here that at least it doesn't appear that maybe, that they didn't harm her. Obviously, they took her. We don't know anything about the fate, but this is how you learned of how it happened. You saw the Hamas videos?
This is how we learned about it. I have to tell you that my grandmother is ill, and without her medication, we don't know how long she can stay. So maybe they haven't heard her, I hope, but it's not like she have a lot of time without her medication, and she's suffering a lot from pain. So I'm sure that every minute of her there without the medication, it's a pain, a really hard pain she's suffering.
What can you tell us about her? I've spent some time in these kibbutzim, and I've spoken to people of her generation and their perspective on what I understand they see as their neighbors in Gaza. That I don't think she held a bone of hostility in her body towards the people of Gaza before this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they had a long-term perspective. They remembered the days before there was a big wall, before there was Hamas. They felt that they knew their neighbors over there. Did your grandmother share those sentiments towards the people in Gaza?
Yes, she did. I have to admit that in the last years, with all the rockets, it's a little bit harder to, remember that there's neighbors in the other side. But my grandmother did believe in peace. She did want to live her life quietly. She didn't want no harm to happen.
I think we may have lost your sound again there, Adva.
It's not
There, we got you.
She could ever imagine. It's not something anyone in our worst nightmares could imagine.
No, none of us. The entire country is with you in that shock and horror at this point. Have you, and I think the answer is we know this already, but have you received any kind of information from authorities, or is there anyone providing you information, or at this point are you still just in the dark with, like so many of us waiting to know?
So today, someone came from the authorities and gave us a formal announcement that she's been kidnapped. We already knew it, but we got an official confirmation. And unfortunately, there's now a fake video going around, posted as my grandmother coming back home And I have to tell you, and please tell the world that's fake. She's still being held in Gaza. She's still not home with us. And we're trying to make everyone help us pressure them to bring her home. So the video that was posted, that's fake. That's not her.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of danger out there of a lot of, this is a very psychological warfare campaign going on by the terrorists there. So important to know that. Adva, I can only thank you again for having the fortitude to just give our viewers a glimpse of the pain and suffering going on here and the realities of what happened here, that your 85-year-old grandmother dragged out of her home by these terrorists and taken into Gaza. This is something the world needs to understand. Our viewers are desperate to feel and understand themselves. So thank you again, being strong enough to come here and share that story with us. We wish your family strength and fortitude. And of course, our hearts with everyone. David Matlin here in Tel Aviv. Instead of Zoom In, a regularly scheduled program, I'm with you for the next 2 hours, breaking down the ongoing terror that has besieged Israel's Gaza periphery, unprecedented in its scale and brutality, and still a very active front this hour, with security forces struggling to regain any semblance of control around the Gaza Strip. What's now thought to be perhaps 1,000 heavily armed, coordinated Hamas terrorists invaded Israel since Saturday morning's surprise attack over land, by sea, by air, and apparently by tunnel as well. And among Israel's southern residents, families who were convinced by our authorities over many years that it was relatively safe to live there, their death toll has grown to the point where there's no previous terror attack or massacre, no previous war in the history of Israel to grasp at for comparison, with at least 700 confirmed dead civilians, more than 100 people of all ages, we're talking grandparents, toddlers, dragged into Hamas captivity inside Gaza, and the soldier toll climbing by the hour. Make no mistake, this is a disaster of historical proportions for the Jewish people. It's a pivotal moment as well for the young state of Israel. The war has just begun, as hundreds of thousands of IDF reserves from the entire country, leaving families behind, have already geared up to join the fight to regain control of the southern part of Israel and eventually embark on whatever comes next. But here's the latest from our Defense Minister, Gallant.
We are setting a siege in this city. No energy, no food, no water, no fuel. All is closed. We are fighting against animals, and we are acting accordingly.
Now, to get more into the situation, we're joined in the studio here by IDF Reserve Colonel Grisha Yakubovich, former head of the civilian department of COGAT. That's the IDF Israeli-Palestinian Relations Department here, to the liaison. You know the system around the Gaza border well, and probably with a lot of secret information about how it used to function down there. Look, I got to start on just based on how it looks. The glaring lack of information from our own sources. I think pretty much everything we know has come from Hamas at this point on the fighting and what's happened. There's been virtually no guidance provided to the public. I don't think there's been any question or answer session provided by a real authority. Is our entire security apparatus in chaos at this point? What's your read? What are we watching?
I'm almost sure that the chaos was Saturday. Okay. Since then, yeah, it's a failure.
Yeah.
Let's put it aside, as I said. Okay. Let's be focused on the war and winning the war. Now, since 2 days ago, I think since Saturday evening, we changed the mode. I think that the IDF, the government of Israel, the state of Israel needs to change the mode. It's to change the modus operandus.
Yeah.
It's more than just to understand it, to digest it, and immediately being prepared for the next action. Now, let's not forget, the failure is intelligence.
Yeah.
So what do you expect us, the state of Israel, the IDF, to play to the hands of Hamas again? So I'm sure that let's say the lack of knowledge that we have is a decision taken at the IDF that we will not help them to understand what is our situation, what we are about to do.
Well, I can understand when it comes to not, a rash invasion of the Strip, why they'd be holding off on that. But, we're looking back on what's taken the last 48 hours or so. Why all day Saturday? Were there no aircraft in the skies over these communities? Why were we watching Hamas terrorists on their cell phones running amok with no threat overhead for 6-8 hours? Has there been an explanation provided yet?
I'm sure that there will be an explanation to that. And as I said, and it's difficult, okay? It's really personally difficult to me as a retired colonel from the IDF to say something like that. It's a failure.
It's a humility moment for all of us. Yeah.
It's a failure, okay? It will be checked, it will be discussed, it will be, we will need to study it, okay? In our history, like the Yom Kippur War. But please, let's put it aside. We need to be focused on the next steps. And the next steps is not to provide information to our enemies. Now, the most simple tool that they also have is this tool.
Right.
Okay, they kidnapped 100.
Is watching our news channels to figure out, hey, exactly what may be happening.
More than that, WhatsApp groups. How many people that were kidnapped by Hamas that are part of a bigger WhatsApp group? Soldiers in the reserve, other groups of the Moshavim, Kibbutzim, that they send the messages since
officers, right.
Okay, and sometimes we share too much information, and let's not forget, if we do that, they actually know exactly what we are about to do.
Right.
So it's about time that in Israel we stop sharing information in this device. It's good. It's excellent. This is my business. It's all here, but we need to change our way of thinking.
I think there's a lot of changes to come around this. We'll discuss this a lot more in depth, Grisha. I got to jump to our correspondent, Nicole Tzedek, who's down essentially at the war front right now. I know, Nicole, you've been moving between communities down there, so I'm not sure exactly where you are, but I know there's probably a dozen different points of contact. There's been new reports of terrorist infiltrations this morning. What can you tell us latest from the battlefront there?
Exactly, David. It really has been a moving game all morning here as Israeli military is trying to move us away from some of these active scenes that we have continued to see throughout the morning here in southern Israel. So right now we are actually near Kfar Aza, which is one of the kibbutz communities where a terrorist infiltrated the area, and IDF said that they did eliminate that terrorist within the past hour and a half. So that was an active scene right. I could walk to the kibbutz basically from where I am right now, and these are some of the hotspots that we continue to see. And so even though the IDF within the past 2 hours initially said that they had the situation on the ground here in southern Israel under control, and there was no open exchange of fire between Israeli soldiers and Hamas terrorists, about 20 minutes later, that's when we saw this infiltration here in Kfar Aza, and they say Israeli forces continue to say that even if there is no active gunfights between soldiers and terrorists, that does not mean the terrorists have all been eliminated. They want to urge citizens that they are continuing to patrol the areas, all of the fields, going door to door,
Nicole,
going into people's gardens.
To cut in here, I know with this incident in Kfar Aza down there were some reports saying that these guys came out of a tunnel. Have you been able to confirm any of that info? What have you heard out there?
That is what the Israeli Defense Force says they are looking into, because we know as the start of this war more than 48 hours ago now, that's when we had those dozens of different barricades through the Israel-Gaza border fence. And now the Israel Defense Forces say they're also looking into the possibility that along with the weaknesses on our border fence, some terrorists are also coming in through tunnels. So although we don't have those confirmed reports, the IDF has confirmed that they are investigating it and actively looking into that possibility. As they are actively looking into that possibility of those terrorist tunnels, they're also actively looking for the terrorists who remain hiding in these communities. So within the past hour and a half, 2 hours, residents in Sderot were finally allowed to actually leave their bomb shelters for the first time in hours. However, still not a safe environment here. As more and more faces, I do want to show you, there are some scenes of happiness here. A pizza delivery on the side of the road, just like this. You know, it's these little glimmers of hope and light, and really the community coming together right now, which is, I think, one of the most amazing scenes that we have continued to see all across Israel right now. It's not just here in the south.
I want to put a grim one to you,
scenes of communities.
Besides pizza deliveries, probably for security forces there. Look, the grim reality, I think you've seen it up close, that the streets, the communities, the fields are still littered with bodies, with dead bodies. Isn't that correct?
That is correct. I've seen multiple with my own eyes today as we're driving through the streets. It's an eerie, apocalyptic war scene as you're driving here in the south. There are cars just lining, abandoned on the road. They're riddled with bullet holes, glass completely shattered, glass lining the roads and bullet casings. I've seen just hundreds of bullet casings lining the roads as well. Some of these cars not only riddled with bullet holes, but lit on fire. There's nothing left behind besides like the shell of the car, tires completely gone. So it is very, very eerie as you're driving through the streets down here in southern Israel. Residents are urged not to stay home. This is still a very, very active scene. We're in an active military scene, as you can see. So any residents, citizens are still asked to stay home at this time.
Absolutely. Nicole Tedek, first of some updates we'll get from you throughout the next 2 hours here. Thank you so far, coming to us from one of the danger areas there. We're stepping out for a short break here, though. Much more to come your way as there's a lot happening around us here. Stay with us.
Now onto the political front, the latest on the possible formation of an emergency unity government. Representatives of Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party and the opposition National Unity Party meeting on the potential move on Monday, but no breakthrough as of yet. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir saying he supports the formation of an emergency national unity government due to the ongoing war with Hamas, but reiterates that he blames the opposition's Benny Gantz and Gadi Eisenkot for the current situation, saying he had warned them for 9 months about Hamas. His comments slammed by Culture Minister Miki Zohar of the Likud party, who blamed him for delaying the formation of a unity government, saying this isn't the time for politics, enough wasting time on nonsense. The people of Israel are fighting for their existence. Still with me in studio, Colonel in the Reserves Grisha Yakubovich and our correspondent Guy Azriel. It's going to be so difficult, Guy, for the nation to process the images that we just saw out of Kfar Aza. As we were discussing in studio earlier, the country is in pain, and seeing these images is almost too much to bear. And now we hear political shenanigans trying to get their ducks in a row to form a unity government. Tell us more.
Look, most of the names and the stories have yet to be published. We're talking about 900 killed, presumably even more, 100 and less than 200 of them are soldiers and the rest are civilians. So we're talking about extremely large numbers of innocent civilians that were butchered there, and that is an event that is going to change Israel forever, the history of the state of Israel forever, and it changes Israel today, and the people understand that we're about to face a much larger escalation, because taking down Hamas is not an easy task. It's not something that Israel has done over the past 15 years in all the previous operations, and that would require wide government. It's clear that the Israeli people are very determined to make a change. I think everybody understands that whatever was allowed until now will no longer be allowed. I have been sitting in the kibbutz on the border watching protests, fire, balloons from the living rooms, from the yards of these kibbutzes, and there was this sense that that can still be allowed. Israel enabled that normality of terrorists on the fence, less than a mile away from the homes of so many innocent people. And when you allow that together with people who hold an ideology that is Nazi-like, killing cold-blooded children, entire families in their homes because they're Jewish, is Nazi-like. And Israel understands that nothing of what was allowed until now can repeat itself. A government will be formed. It's only a matter of time, a wider emergency government. And Israel is facing much tougher days still.
Grisha, there are many people who are still waiting for word on their loved ones. They were kidnapped during that music festival and elsewhere, taken across the border to Gaza. It's not clear if they are alive or not. It's not clear what the plan is for Hamas? What kind of efforts are underway to make sure that those hostages are freed and that they are freed alive, realistically?
Well, Abu Ubaidah declared yesterday that for any bomb that Israel will bomb Gaza, they will kill a hostage. Will that happen? I don't know. But what we are going to see is actually two parallel moves. One will be a war in Gaza with a clear mission to win the war and not thinking about hostages. On the other hand, the state of Israel will do whatever possible to free the hostages and the ones that were kidnapped without even thinking about the war. It's a built-in dilemma, it's a built-in situation with their own difficulties, but it's two big, huge efforts. But this is not the end of the story. Because from what I understand now, as I see the reality from the eyes of Hamas, they are in a huge problem, in a trouble actually. They achieved way more than what they expected. And it became actually their weakness, and this is what I see. 7 times Abu Ubaidah declared, and he called for something. They are talking about negotiations. They are talking about a possible ceasefire, yes or no. And what I think, I'm tempted to say it. Okay, I'm tempted, but I will say it. I think that Hamas understand that they were sacrificed on the altar by Iran and Hezbollah. And there is a huge advantage in that. It means Israel can implement the mission freely without being obligated to other, let's say, dilemmas from the north. On the other hand, it might bring Hamas to an understanding that they have nothing to lose. So this is, I think, the 24 following hours will show us where are we heading towards.
And many of the people who are waiting for answers include American families who are waiting to find out if their loved ones are okay. I'm going to bring in our senior defense correspondent, Jonathan Regev, because those families are waiting for answers. What can you tell us about that agonizing wait for some kind of clarity about what has happened to their children?
Agonizing wait, Benita, as you describe it, for all those kidnapped and kidnapped or missing. Many people do not know where their loved ones are. Are they killed? Are they kidnapped? Are they hiding somewhere? It is not clear. And among those missing at the moment, there are Americans, there are British, there are French, Argentines, many nationalities, and 4 American families will hold shortly a press conference here in Tel Aviv, demanding answers not only from the Israeli government but also from the Biden administration, asking the Biden administration to come in and put some leverage, trying to get answers, maybe trying to free the hostages in Gaza. What can the American administration do that the Israeli government cannot do? I'm not sure. I don't know how much they can assist from far away, but the families are demanding answers. We know that the answers from the Israeli side are coming very slow, so they're demanding answers from the American side as well. As mentioned, 4 American families are about to hold a press conference shortly in Tel Aviv, demanding answers from Israel and the United States, as these are American citizens.
And we will be bringing that press conference to our viewers live as it happens. You made mention, Jonathan, of information coming out of the IDF. So many questions right now, but there was a briefing earlier on in the day. What was the latest in terms of the updates about what is confirmed, or what happened in the last 4 days of this war?
Not a lot of information. Obviously, we know that Hamas easily, in a way that is way too easily, embarrassingly easily, humiliatingly easily, came into Israeli territory, Israeli communities all along the border, and was able to kill hundreds and hundreds of Israelis, mostly civilians, kidnap many to Gaza, and the numbers of those in Gaza are still not clear. The identities of those in Gaza are still not clear. Concrete information is coming only from sources in Gaza and videos in Gaza. I think we're hearing sirens actually to the south of us, not in Tel Aviv itself,
Jonathan,
but we're hearing them here where we are in Tel Aviv.
Sirens are sounding in Tel Aviv. There is a red alert.
We're now going indoors.
sounding. Jonathan, please go to shelter. Sirens are currently sounding in Tel Aviv. That was our correspondent, Jonathan Regev, our senior defense correspondent, speaking to us live from Tel Aviv. As we were talking, we heard sirens, and we can hear them as well from the studio. Here with me in studio, Israeli-Palestinian relations expert, Colonel on the Reserves, Grisha Yakubovich, former head of the civilian department of Kogat in the IDF, and our correspondent, Guy Azriel. Just to be clear, those sirens sounding right now, people across Tel Aviv are going to shelters. This is something that has happened not for the first time since this all happened. Guy Azriel, break down what is known, what is happening right now across central Israel.
Just updating our viewers, rocket alert sounding and a barrage of rockets across Israel, including central Israel, Rishon LeZion, Tel Aviv, Yafo, Bat Yam. We're seeing also in Ashdod, slightly further south. Just another attempt of Hamas to hit back. New cities, that's not surprising. Hamas is at a state where it will do whatever it can. And as we know, Hamas is looking to kill Israelis, to kill Jews, as they did in the kibbutzes. And they do right now.
Stop you right now, because this is the extent of where sirens are sounding. Bnei Brak, which is here in Tel Aviv, Givat Shmuel, Petach Tikva, Ramat Gan West, all happening right now. We are hearing overhead what sounds like, and I say sounds like an interception, but we have an expert with us, Colonel on the Reserves, Grisha Yakubovich. Explain that noise we heard overhead. It sounds like an interception. The Iron Dome missile defense system intercepting rockets coming into Tel Aviv as we speak.
Yes, rockets are over our heads and they are intercepted in the air above us. I'm an expert to explain that. I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert to defend us here in studio, because we are the only ones who stayed in the studio. Everybody are in the shelter, but we are online. We are live, so we have to stay here. The meaning is that Hamas and Jihad launching rockets into the center of our biggest cities in Israel, into neighborhoods, civilians, and the only way that the IDF and the State of Israel can protect those civilians is by using this amazing Iron Dome system, intercepting those rockets in the air.
If you're just joining us now, breaking news, rocket sirens are sounding in central Israel right now. That means that rockets have been sent from the Gaza Strip. It's day 4 of the war between Hamas and Israel. Rockets are being sent towards Tel Aviv as we speak. There are sirens going off across parts of Bnei Brak, Petach Tikva, a heavy barrage in central Israel. What you're looking at on your screen right now are scenes out of Gaza. At the same time as we speak to you, the Israeli Air Force is targeting Hamas sites in the Gaza Strip. These are live images on your screen right now out of Gaza. Here in studio, Grisha Yakubovich, Colonel in the Reserves, former head of the civilian department of Kogat in the IDF, and our correspondent, Guy Azriel. What can you tell us, Guy?
At least 15 rockets fired by Hamas just over the past several minutes. Also, they say they've targeted the Ben Gurion International Airport. That is nothing new that they want to do that. Obviously, a strategic point for the Hamas terror group. And we're speaking about the Iron Dome, about this incredible invention of Israel that is intercepting rockets mid-air, protecting Israeli civilians. But there's a lot of talk these days about the fact that the use of this system was both a blessing and a curse, because it has allowed Israel for so many years to contain, to live with this reality of a murderous terror group that is constantly firing rockets into Israeli civilians.
And those sirens sounding in Rishon LeZion East, in Irus, and in Petach Tikva. This barrage continues. It's coming into Tel Aviv. If you are just joining us right now, rocket sirens alerting thousands of people across central Israel right now to get to shelters. We were speaking to our defense correspondent, Jonathan Regev. He was in Tel Aviv. He's gone to a shelter. We are staying here in studio to continue with the discussion. If you can see the glass behind us in the studio, our newsroom is empty. Our colleagues have gone through to the shelter. They are waiting until the green light as such is given for people to come out again from shelters. Hundreds and thousands of people, civilians, across Tel Aviv are now waiting in shelters.
Millions of Israelis are in shelters now. The Tel Aviv area alone is 1 million people, and we're talking about many other cities, many other major cities like Ashdod, Rishon LeZion, some of the most populated cities in Israel. So we're talking about the fact that Iron Dome has been saving many lives, but it has also allowed Israel to live with this reality, a reality that has changed on Saturday, because when a terror group wants to kill Israelis, eventually, when it has the will and the means, eventually does so. And so Israel protected itself with these rockets for so many years, but didn't deal with the problem. The problem was that a murderous terror group, an Islamist radical terror group, ISIS-like, Nazi-like terror group that wants to kill Jews as their main goal, continues to thrive in Gaza, just a mile away from the Israeli communities. And that reality now will have to change. So Israel is able to protect itself from most of these rockets. Obviously, that is one of the many threats posed by Hamas, also by Hezbollah. And Israel knows now that rockets that are aimed at Israeli cities will eventually reach those cities. And if Israel doesn't take care of the problem, as it will now with Hamas, if it doesn't do so with Hezbollah, it will bear the consequences. And I think that is why these days reality is about to change.
Over and above hearing the sirens that are warning civilians to get to shelters and to do so very quickly, most people in the country would have apps on their phones alerting them to the fact that they need to get to a shelter. One that came through on this particular phone in studio saying enter the protected space and stay in it for 10 minutes in Tel Aviv South and in Jaffa. But as we are describing, there are many, many cities that are being targeted with rockets right now. Sirens are sounding and the Iron Dome is intercepting. Grisha, breakdown from a war perspective, from a person who has been involved in fighting wars, what is happening right now in terms of this escalation. It is day 4 on the war and rockets are coming into Tel Aviv.
Well, Hamas are deeply underground, hiding like rats. And what we see now is the plan, okay, the implementation of the plan that they planned with Iran and Hezbollah. It means those rockets are probably located a few weeks or few months were located on the ground before the operation, or underground tunnels, and so they will be able to launch them. And they are trying to lead something that we will see the first signs of it the following week. What Hamas declared right now, and I've read it while they launched, it's the response of the resistance towards the state of Israel because of the fact that the IDF is bombing houses of civilians. It means they are trying to create an equation of if you bomb our civilian houses, we will do the same to you. They are trying to justify, okay, what they are actually, what they've been doing for the last 15, 20 years actually. What we will see from now on, when the moment Hamas will understand that they will probably sacrificed by Iran on the altar, we will see huge, big moves of Hamas and some of their supporters all over the world to create the legitimacy to Israel or toward Israel, so we will not have the legitimacy to continue with the operation inside Gaza. So we will see those rockets launched again and again and again the following days and weeks, and we will see our abilities with our technology in Iron Dome intercepting the, let's say, the most of the rockets. But of course some rockets will fall, will fail, and we hope that there will be no casualties.
Rishon LeZion, Beit Hanan, Beit Oved, Bnei Brak, Beit Shmuel, Petah Tikva, Ramat Gan, West. These are just some of the cities right now where sirens have sounded, alerting residents, alerting, as Guy alluded to, in total, millions of Israelis right now who are going to shelters. Why? Because they only have a limited amount of time to get to safety. Picture this. If you are in your flat, your apartment, with your elderly relative, if you are in your home with your baby, if somebody is asleep right now, if somebody isn't well, if you are in a hospital, you have a certain amount of time, a very, very short space of time to get to a shelter. If you are lucky, you may have one in your apartment. It may be a closed-off room in your home. If you are in an older, large apartment building, you may be running, as we speak, down flights of stairs, racing to get to a shelter. If you are driving right now in central Tel Aviv and you hear sirens, you have to stop your car. You have to get out of that vehicle on the side of the road, and you have to lie down, cover your head, and wait. If you see a child, you will see adults in the footage that you will see lying on top of children to protect them. Sometimes children, people don't even know, but if you see a child lying on the side of the road, terrified, adults will run to them and cover them, protect them, potentially from a rocket, potentially from falling debris, potentially from shrapnel. This is happening in Tel Aviv. This is happening in the last few moments. Grisha, can a ground invasion in Gaza stop this kind of scenario from playing out?
It depends what will be the scale of this invasion, okay? So what we see now, since yesterday, the shift from defense to attack, and I think that I've been 30 years in the IDF, this is nothing, okay? Nothing is similar to what is happening inside Gaza with the strikes that the Air Force, the amount of bombs that are being thrown in Gaza. I live near Gaza, so my house shakes, okay? Every half an hour from those booms on the border. Bet Hanun neighborhood, the majority is destroyed. Sajaya neighborhood destroyed. Bet Lahia destroyed. The center of Gaza, Rimal destroyed. El Furqan neighborhood destroyed. And I think that everything is being prepared for a ground entry to Gaza. Now, how will it look like? It depends. It depends on the decisions, the operational decisions that will be taken by the commanders of the IDF. It depends on the outcomes of those Air Force attacks on Gaza, and it depends, of course, on the response that Hamas will probably continue in the following week against Israel.
I want to say something because we speak a lot about Israel's war against Hamas, and one word that is not mentioned here is Palestinians. And as difficult as it is to say, Hamas is made up of Palestinians. Hamas is the ruling group over the Gaza area. It is the most popular group among the Palestinians, both in Gaza and in the West Bank. The only reason Mahmoud Abbas is still in power is because Israel enables that and because there are no elections in the Gaza Strip. But most surveys point to the fact that Hamas is the most popular group in the Palestinian territories. That same Hamas group whose ideology is to slaughter women and children. I've yet to see the condemnation from Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas to that slaughter of children and women and elderly in these kibbutzes, to shooting, cutting off their heads, burning them alive. Where is the condemnation for the Palestinians? Where is that? Yes, there have been crimes by Israelis in the past. I always heard Israeli prime ministers, defense ministers condemning attacks on Palestinians. We've seen Israelis who committed these crimes in prison. Where is that from the Palestinians? Why don't we hear that?
We want to find out exactly what is going on in Tel Aviv. Let's go to our correspondent, Robert Swift. Robert, siren sounding just a short while ago, people dashing to shelters. What can you tell us?
That's correct. We're at the Ichilov Hospital here in Tel Aviv. We had actually come here to report on the blood donation drive, which continues behind me, as you can see. But just a few short minutes ago, that all had to stop, and everybody in this building made their way quickly to the shelters as the alarms went off for a rocket alert siren again here in Tel Aviv, the first of today's.
So give us an idea, Robert, of what happens when that siren happens there. You're in a hospital environment. Where do people go? How much time do they have to get to the shelters where you are?
So it very much depends on the building that you're in. A major hospital like this is a large building in itself, and it offers a bit more protection than, say, small residential buildings. In those sorts of buildings, I live just close to here, the building where I live. Essentially, there's one shelter which is in the basement. Everybody leaves their apartments, runs downstairs, and gathers together in the basement. Now, here at the hospital, basically everybody got up, they moved their way in deeper into the building and started making their way to the shelter. I have to say, Israelis are pretty accustomed to this sort of activity, and sometimes a little cavalier about it. Many people, of course, they made their way to the shelter, but it's not as if everybody went deep into the basement itself, because the alert was over pretty quickly and people got back to what they were doing. As you can see, the alert was only a few minutes ago, and the blood drive is very much back in full swing now.
We are looking at live images, a split screen on our screens right now. On the one side, Tel Aviv, sirens sounding across several parts in just the last few moments. The most recent parts, Rishon LeZion West, Beit Dagan. And we also are seeing scenes out of Gaza, where we know that the IDF is targeting Hamas sites. Robert Swift, you are still with us there. We know that millions of people had to race to shelters just a short while ago when then sirens sounded overhead, but it's a very difficult and different scenario when you are dealing with people, patients, people who are sick, people who are elderly, people who are already being treated. Give us an understanding of what it looks like inside the wards of a hospital when a siren goes off in Israel, when there is an alert that rockets could be heading towards the premises.
That's correct. Of course, all the medical staff that you can see behind me in the medical scrubs, they have a twofold responsibility. First, obviously, their natural instinct to protect themselves and to get to the shelter. But before that, they very much need to be looking after the patients. That may mean essentially picking up the patient and moving them deeper into the hospital, into where it's more protected, which obviously with some patients that can take more than one member of staff. So logistically it's quite difficult, and bear in mind all this has to be done within seconds, within 2 minutes, and so it is a great weight of burden on the medical staff here, who essentially are trying to get on with their job and deal with the ongoing crisis, but then they also have this on a fairly regular basis. Throughout the day they're having to deal with this sort of alert.
Correspondent Robert Swift at Ichilov Hospital in Tel Aviv. We will be coming back to you for regular updates. Stay safe, Robert. Thank you very much for that update. And still with me in studio, Israeli-Palestinian relations expert, Colonel in the Reserves, Grisha Yakubovich, former head of the Civilian Department of Kogat in the IDF, and our correspondent, Guy Azriel. The sirens continue. Guy, give us an idea of the extent of where these rockets are heading towards, and again, the fact that if there wasn't an Iron Dome missile defense system, there would be far more carnage. We know right now we're waiting for confirmation on if there have been any hits and if anybody may have been hurt. Nonetheless, there is panic involved when people are racing to get to safety.
Yes, these rockets are obviously loaded with dozens of kilos of ammunition, of explosives, and their impact can be very serious if it does hurt. Luckily, the Iron Dome does save human lives, many of those. But even before this barrage, and we're still waiting to hear information, but for now, no immediate word on injuries, or any serious injuries from this barrage just half an hour ago. 2 fatalities on the southern border from a rocket that hit there. yes. Two, we understand Thai workers, 2 foreign workers hit by a rocket hitting near one of the communities there on the southern border. Obviously, over there is a lot less time, sometimes just seconds from the moment a siren rings until it hits the ground. Very little time for people to find refuge, to find shelter, especially with these guys if they're working in the fields. This is a community that has a lot of workers working in agriculture, working the fields there. It seems like they were outside when those rockets hit, and unfortunately 2 of them are dead. 1 is seriously wounded. These are the actual results of these rockets. And as we speak about Thai workers, we're speaking about 17 different nationalities other than Israelis that were impacted by this recent attack. People who were killed, people who were kidnapped, people whose bodies have been hijacked by Hamas. And this is also another point in which this specific escalation is different from others because it involves so many other nationalities. And we just heard from Jonathan Regev about the Americans who were kidnapped into Gaza. Many other nationals are among the victims. Many other nationals are victims of this Hamas ideology, and the world needs to understand that this needs to be eliminated because it will not stop with Israel. This is what we heard from Hamas, and we heard from Iran as well.
Grisha, I specifically want to speak about those hostages that Guy alluded to. We don't even know how many people have been taken from southern Israel across the border to Gaza. We do know, because we've seen the footage, there are women, there are children, there are elderly people as well. There are babies, and they are being held in Gaza as we speak. We're also looking at images on our screen right now of the IDF striking Hamas targets, sites, weapons depots inside Gaza. How does Israel manage to conduct an assault on terror infrastructure and manage to make sure that the Israelis and people from overseas that we've been talking about, who were also captured and taken across, remain alive?
Benita, I was trying to avoid from saying that, okay? But it looks like, in a way, you forced me to say it. We saw animals, okay? I cannot call them Hamas and Jihad, the ones who penetrated Israel. I cannot call them terrorists even. They are animals. So what do you expect that animals would do to the people that they kidnapped into Gaza? That they will give them water like we do? That they will feed them like we do? I believe that they will start, unfortunately, I hope I'm wrong, okay? But what I believe that what we will see is executions. Unfortunately, what we will see is that they will bring those hostages to their headquarters because they know that we are about to bomb it, and we are still about to see some horrible pictures and evidences outside of Gaza and from inside Gaza. And of course they will blame us, that we bombed it and we did it, etc., etc. The story is well known. So I hope that we will be able to hope that they will be all alive, that we will be able to free them. But unfortunately, with those animals, it can, they are killers, they are murderers.
And speaking about those war crimes, a report this morning in the Washington Post presenting images. I hope we can see them on our screens right now. You can see live hostages, live Israeli hostages. This is in Kibbutz Be'eri. You can see them filmed alive, taken by these terrorists, and then minutes later, sitting in blood, being killed by these terrorists. This is just one example.
Those images, obviously, we are blurring those images.
One example of these war crimes. This was the reality in dozens, if not more, of homes of Israelis in those southern communities. You can see those innocent Israelis taken out of their homes by these animals. In this case, there is proof on camera that they filmed killing them after being handcuffed.
And as we are speaking, another barrage of rockets is heading towards central Israel, Tel Aviv specifically. This is breaking news once again. Another barrage of rockets heading towards central Israel, towards Tel Aviv. Sirens sounding once again. The list is long. Ramat HaSharon, Herzliya, Kfar Shmariyahu, central Tel Aviv. Once again, it's the second time this has happened during this broadcast. Sirens are sounding in Tel Aviv, and millions of people in central Israel, millions of civilians in central Israel are racing to shelters once again. It looks, Grisha, like this barrage is just going to continue.
Yes, as I said, it will continue. Hamas getting they begin to understand that they were sacrificed by Iran. This is my understanding. In a way, operationally, I hope I'm wrong. Why? Because we will be able to deal with Hamas and we will implement the mission and we will win the war in Gaza. But there is an advantage. If Hezbollah will start the war, that we will be able also to eliminate the threat from the north. So what I understand that Iran and Hezbollah are waiting, okay, because they were expected to join the war 2 days ago or even yesterday. And as time goes by, we see that it's not moving, maybe because of the Sixth Fleet, maybe because of the Western coalition, I don't know why. So Hamas, the moment Hamas will understand that they are sacrificed on the altar, we will see more and more rockets being launched into Israel because they will have nothing to lose.
Are you surprised, Grisha, given your vast experience in this field, at the types of arsenal, the extent of the weapons cache that Hamas has right now? There is no doubt that Iran has been funding the weapons. This has been something we have been covering for a very long time. Nonetheless, this is only day 4 of what many are saying is going to be a long haul. Are you surprised at their capabilities coming out of just the Gaza Strip so far?
No, I'm not surprised. Since 2012, Operation Pillar of Defense, we saw the change Hamas did. So instead of being dependent on the weapons that they will get from Libya, Sudan, through Egypt, and then underground through the tunnels into Gaza, we understood that they've built their own industry, their own terror industry underground. By the way, this is the whole idea behind the policy of not allowing to dual-use materials to be entered to Gaza, because of the fact that we understand that they got the engineering, the planning, the abilities, the knowledge from Iran, and they've built their military industry, terror industry, underground. So they produce rockets underground since 2012. It's not something new. Ironically, they did it with the electricity that we supplied them to Gaza.
So you bring up the next point, the strategy going forward for Israel. As we're speaking, in just the space of this broadcast, twice sirens sounding in central Tel Aviv, and we've listed the many, many cities that are also being targeted. And thanks to the Iron Dome missile defense system, these incoming projectiles are being deflected. We will keep, of course, bringing you verified, clarified, confirmed information. And when we have that clarity, that is when we will confirm the extent of the damage and what is known for sure. Having said that, this is just in the space of a short while, and we know that people are racing, scared, looking at their phones, checking in with their community members, checking in with their loved ones, elderly people, children as well. What about the psyche of the nation right now? Just a short while ago, we saw that 40 children were butchered in Kfar Aza. We are seeing the images. We discussed the pain, and now people are racing to safety. What is this doing for the psyche of the country right now?
I want to take you back to Second World War. 6 million of us were butchered. And out of that, we've built a country, a state. So I believe we are a strong nation. I think that they will just understand how strong we are, and we will be able to deal with everything. It's going to be painful. It's going to be, we're going to lick our wounds. It will take time. It's a disaster for us, but eventually, we are, I believe, this is how I understand the situation. The state of Israel decided to lead a process, a war with Gaza, to not to eliminate, but to make sure that the Hamas role in Gaza and in the West Bank will collapse.
I'm going to stop you right there. We will continue this discussion, but right now I want to check in with our correspondent, Robert Swift. He is at Ichilov Hospital in Tel Aviv. Unimaginable to think that sirens are also sounding inside a hospital. Obviously, people needing to get to cover. What kind of update can you share right now with us, Robert?
That's right, Benny. It was just a few minutes ago that I spoke to you to tell you about the red alert that we had then. And in the space that we've been off air, there was a second red alert. People, again, picked up what they were doing and started making their way deeper into the building to get to the shelter. There was some confusion. Halfway through the event, people thought it was a false alarm. But then we heard the explosions overhead, which was most likely the interceptions from the Iron Dome shooting down the incoming rockets as they approached the city. Now, as you can see behind me, already people are back to work. The blood donation continues, and the staff here are very much eager to continue with the work, despite the ongoing security situation, which is taking place in the south, but very much still impacting here in Tel Aviv.
Also sirens sounding in Rishon LeZion, Cholon, Azur, Beit Hagan, Herzliya also as well. But where you are, Robert, give us an idea of how much time people have, patients have, to get to shelter, and how doctors and nurses and health workers there are able to help patients get to safety. It must be a complicated situation unfolding there at a time like this.
It very much is. Bear in mind that this is quite a crowded hospital. You have 2 minutes. If you are young and well-abled, that's enough time to get into shelter. But there are many people here who are older, who might be infirm due to injuries. This is a hospital, after all. Not to mention that there's people immediately behind me that are in the middle of donating blood. All this has to be put on hold. The patient has to be picked up and moved, and this obviously takes a lot of time. Now, for the staff, they have a natural preservation, an instinct to look after themselves, but they have to put that aside and take care first and foremost of the patients which they're taking care of. And we've seen as the crowd move deeper into the building, the staff very much sort of herding people, getting them to where they need to be in order to let the danger pass, and then straight away back to work.
It's often interesting to see the different ways people respond when there is a siren. Some people can remain calm. Often there are panic attacks. We've spoken to many paramedics who've attended to the scene of people who either are in a state emotionally as they run to safety, or are just worried about getting there without tripping, helping elderly people, helping children, carrying babies, or waking up relatives who may be asleep. Talk to us about the mood, the calm, the panic. What is it like? Describe for us what it is like when there's so many people there in a confined space wanting to donate blood, and now they all need to get to safety. How are they helping each other? What does it look like, Robert?
Well, this is the second day that I've been at a blood donation drive, and I have to say that the mood is quite changeable. Often people are smiling and coming together. I think there's a sense that they're happy to actually be doing something to respond to the events of the weekend, and to take comfort in that unity. But quite quickly the mood can change, and I think that shows the level of anxiety which is underneath. And not just it doesn't just change in regards to events like we've had just in the last few minutes, the two rocket alarms. Sometimes just interaction between people is extremely tense, and people are doing their best. They're trying to put on a brave face and to do what they can to be involved in helping by donating blood. But you can tell underneath there is a lot of tension.
No doubt, and
I have to say,
continue.
No, sorry, I was going to have to say, and that's just what I've seen here in the hospital today and yesterday at the blood donation where I was. it's a slightly different picture on the streets. Today is the first day that I would say in Tel Aviv there seems to be a slight sense that things are returning back to normal. Not normal as most of our viewers would understand it, but normal as in under threat of a rocket attack. The 3 days before that, I have to say that the streets of Tel Aviv were at times quite eerily quiet, and it was clear that people, they may be accustomed to security incidents, they may be accustomed to the rocket attacks, which a lot of Israelis have experienced before and have learned to deal with. But there was an eeriness in the streets over the last few days, and it was clear that that was a result of the shock of the level of violence that was unleashed over the weekend. I have to say that maybe a little bit as people have moved past that phase, but clearly that's just at surface level. The shock of the events of these last 4 days will take quite a long time for people to get past.
Certainly, as sirens are sounding and people in Tel Aviv, which you're describing as being particularly quiet in recent days, just in the last couple of moments have been racing to shelters as those sirens have been sounding, alerting citizens that incoming projectiles are heading from the Gaza Strip towards Israel, and those rockets and projectiles have been intercepted by the Iron Dome missile defense system. Thank you so much for now. Our correspondent Robert Swift, live from Ichilov Hospital in Tel Aviv. Thank you very much. And we will, of course, be going back to Robert in our upcoming broadcast, and our team of panelists are going to stay as well because our coverage will continue. Breaking news coverage here at I24 News, where sirens have sounded in central Israel twice within the last hour, meaning that millions of people in central Tel Aviv, in a range of cities, including Holon, including Herzliya, including central Tel Aviv, have had to race to shelters as sirens sounded, warning civilians of incoming rockets coming from the Gaza Strip. Our coverage is going to continue. We will stay here in studio bringing you the latest developments as they unfold. We will stay committed to verifying the news and bringing you the updates as we can. So make sure you stay tuned. We're taking a moment's break, but we're back. Stay with us.
King C. Gillette is an award-winning lineup of tools and facial hair care products. Men's Health's best beard trimmer for beginners, Men's Journal's best beard shampoos and washes, and GQ's best beard conditioners for soft, no-itch facial hair. Carefully crafted for every guy that wants to look his best. Curated by the name men have trusted since 1901. Gillette. Your beard is our trade. These are your tools. King C. Gillette.
The people of Israel lived through one such moment this weekend. Bloody hands of the terrorist organization Hamas, a group whose stated purpose for being is to kill Jews. This was an act of sheer evil. More than 1,000 civilians slaughtered, not just killed, slaughtered in Israel. Among them, at least 14 American citizens killed. Parents butchered using their bodies to try to protect their children. Stomach-turning reports of babies being killed. Entire families slain. Young people massacred while attending a musical festival to celebrate peace. To celebrate peace. Women raped, assaulted, paraded as trophies. Families hid their fear for hours and hours, desperately trying to keep their children quiet to avoid drawing attention. And thousands of wounded, alive but carrying with them the bullet holes and the shrapnel wounds and the memory of what they endured. You all know these traumas never go away. There's still so many families desperately waiting to hear the fate of their loved ones, not knowing if they're alive or dead or hostages. Infants in their mother's arms, grandparents in wheelchairs, Holocaust survivors abducted and held hostage. Hostages whom Hamas has now threatened to execute in violation of every code of human morality. It's abhorrent. The brutality of Hamas, these bloodthirstiness brings to mind the worst rampages of ISIS. This is terrorism. But sadly, for the Jewish people, it's not new. This attack has brought to the surface painful memories and the scars left by a millennia of anti-Semitism and genocide of the Jewish people. So in this moment, we must be crystal clear. We stand with Israel. We stand with Israel. And we will make sure Israel has what it needs to take care of its citizens, defend itself, and respond to this attack. There's no justification for terrorism. There's no excuse. Hamas does not stand for the Palestinian people's right to dignity and self-determination. Its stated purpose is the annihilation of the state of Israel and the murder of Jewish people. They use Palestinian civilians as human shields. Hamas offers nothing but terror and bloodshed with no regard to who pays the price. The loss of innocent life is heartbreaking. Like every nation in the world, Israel has the right to respond, indeed has a duty to respond to these vicious attacks. I just got off the phone with the third call with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and I told him the United States experience what Israel is experiencing, our response would be swift, decisive, and overwhelming. We also discussed how democracies like Israel and the United States are stronger and more secure when we act according to the rule of law. Terrorists purposely target civilians, kill them. We uphold the laws of war, the law of war. It matters. There's a difference. Today, Americans across the country are praying for all those families that have been ripped apart. A lot of us know how it feels. It leaves a black hole in your chest when you lose family. Feeling like you're being sucked in. The anger, the pain, sense of hopelessness. This is what they mean by a human tragedy, an atrocity on an appalling scale. We're going to continue to stand united, supporting the people of Israel who are suffering unspeakable losses and opposing the hatred and violence of terrorism. My team has been in near constant communication with our Israeli partners and partners all across the region and the world from the moment this crisis began. We're surging additional military assistance, including ammunition and interceptors, to replenish Iron Dome. We're going to make sure that Israel does not run out of these critical assets to defend its cities and its citizens. My administration has consulted closely with Congress throughout this crisis. And when Congress returns, we're going to ask them to take urgent action to fund the national security requirements of our critical partners. This is not about party or politics. This is about the security of our world, the security of the United States of America. We now know that American citizens are among those being held by Hamas. I've directed my team to share intelligence and deploy additional experts from across the United States government to consult with and advise Israeli counterparts on hostage recovery efforts. Because as president, I have no higher priority than the safety of Americans being held hostage around the world. The United States has also enhanced our military force posture in the region to strengthen our deterrence. The Department of Defense has moved the USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group to the Eastern Mediterranean and bolstered our fighter aircraft presence. And we stand ready to move in additional assets as needed. Let me say again, to any country, any organization, anyone thinking of taking advantage of this situation, I have one word: don't. Don't. Our hearts may be broken, but our resolve is clear. Yesterday, I also spoke with the leaders of France, Germany, Italy, and UK to discuss the latest developments with our European allies and coordinate our united response. This comes on top of days of steady engagement with partners across the region. We're also taking steps at home. In cities across the United States of America, police departments have stepped up security around centers of Jewish life. The Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Bureau of Investigation are working closely with state and local law enforcement and Jewish community partners to identify and disrupt any domestic threat that could emerge in connection with these horrific attacks. This is a moment for the United States to come together, to grieve with those who are mourning. Let's be real clear. There is no place for hate in America. Not against Jews, not against Muslims, not against anybody. We reject. What we reject is terrorism. We condemn the indiscriminate evil, just as we've always done. That's what America stands for. You know, just over 50 years ago, I was thinking about it this morning, talking to the Secretary of State, the Vice President in my office. Over 50 years ago, as a young senator, I visited Israel for the first time as a newly elected senator. And I had a long, long trip, a meeting with Golda Meir in her office just before the Yom Kippur War. And I guess she could see the consternation on my face as she described what was being faced. They were facing. We walked outside in that sort of hallway outside her office to have some photos. She looked at me all of a sudden and said, "Would you like to have a photograph?" And so I got up and followed her out. We were standing there silent, looking at the press. She could tell, I guess, I was concerned. She leaned over and whispered to me, she said, "Don't worry, Senator Biden. We have a secret rep in here in Israel." My word is what she said. We have no place else to go. We have no place else to go. For 75 years, Israel has stood as the ultimate guarantor of the security of Jewish people around the world, so that the atrocities of the past could never happen again. And let there be no doubt, the United States has Israel's back. We will make sure the Jewish and democratic state of Israel can defend itself today, tomorrow, as we always have. It's as simple as that. These atrocities have been sickening. We're with Israel. Let's make no mistake. Thank you.
Mr. President.
There's only one SUV brand that has the best-selling plug-in hybrid, the most luxurious SUV in its class, and America's best mid-size pickup. Jeep, the most awarded SUV brand. Get great deals now at the Jeep Adventure Days event.
During Jeep Adventure Days, get 10% below MSRP on select 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee, Grand Cherokee L, and Gladiator models. Visit Jeep.com for details.
Thanks for tuning in. You're watching I-24 News live from Tel Aviv in an Israel that's under attack for the 5th day straight since Saturday. I'm Ariel Margalit. The death toll from the attack on Israel